Hello, I am Juan Subieta, and for my engineering ethics final exam, I'm gonna discuss the Chirajara bridge collapse in Colombia and the ethical implications involved in this case. So, to set the background of my presentation, uh, the Chirajara Bridge was a 940 cable stayed bridge with two towers, and one of them collapsed in January 15 of 2018. On the collapse, killed 10 construction workers. It was a part of the expansion project of the highway between the capital of Colombia, Bogota, and Villavicencio, and it was scheduled to open on March of the same year. So I'm gonna show a video of the testimony of one of the workers. I don't wanna show the actual collapse, just for respect to the victims, but there is no graphic video of the actual collapse either. And this recording was from the Washington Post.
Cuando de repente escuchamos un estruendo bastante fuerte, las guayas que van sosteniendo los teleféricos para hacer el montaje del puente empezaron a reventarse. Entonces, nosotros lo único que hicimos fue correr, tratar de evacuar. Había mucho humo, había desespero por todo lado. En el momento que evacuamos, volteamos a mirar hacia este lado, ya no estaba el pilón. Y nada, nos vinimos a tratar de ayudar a nuestros compañeros, pero desafortunadamente hay compañeros que fallecieron.
Okay. So what actually happened once the collapse happened? Uh, the company Modjeskian Masters is one of the world's leading bridge engineering firms, and they do some consulting for design, analysis, inspections, and for all types of bridges around the world. So they conducted the research on why this tower of the bridge collapsed. So to have some background about this, the collapse structure was a cable stayed bridge consisting of two diamond-shaped towers. And the western towers only collapsed, destroying that part of the bridge, and the other tower remained standing, approximately in the same construction stage as the collapsed tower. The Modjeskian Masters were engaged 1 week after the collapse to conduct the forensic investigation. They did an inspection of the collapse structure, they did analytic studies, the evaluation of the design, and reviewed the construction documentation, the testing of materials, and for the critical structure component. And they found out that the bridge was designed wrongly, and they assumed that the steel inside the fireground could handle the sideways pulling force from the tower shape instead of using a stronger cross beam, which is more typical in this kind of bridges. This unusual approach wasn't properly reviewed or tested, and the designers didn't consider how the legs of the tower would bend or how the stress would build up in one spot. Although other problems were found, and this design flaw was the main cause of the collapse. So they actually didn't calculate the right stress for the design of this part, and because of that, the diaphragm couldn't resist the stress these two legs. Well, yeah, these two legs did on the partially built bridge. So now I'm gonna talk about the ethical implications related or involved in the bridge collapse. and I'm gonna use the National Society of Professional Engineers Code of Ethics. So the first one was the negligence in design. So the engineers involved in this case made an unusual design choice of relying on internal steel in the diagram rather than a tension-tight crossbeam, and they did not properly evaluate the consequences of the decision. And I think this goes against the main code of ethic that holds paramount the safety, health, and welfare of the public. And this negligence in designs, especially the one that deviated from standard practice, must be always carefully considered, analyzed, and verified before getting into practice. The second one was the poor risk identification and evaluation. Based on the Modestic and Masters research study, they said that probably there was poor or no review or evaluation of the design or other potential risk like the stress concentrations. This situation goes against the ethical principle of integrity, and engineers have to make sure their designs or products are always safe. And of course, this can be accomplished by conducting the right risk assessment to identify any risk or problem involved in a project. And by doing this, engineers can evaluate ways to prevent them. So the third one was the neglect of public and worker welfare. So the main consequence of the wrong design was that 20 people resulted injured and 10 of them dead. And of course, the engineers involved in this project had the ethical obligation to prioritize the safety and well-being of all individuals affected, and they did not. So they were responsible for making a design decision that could have protected human life and prevented harm, as it is online in the fundamental principle of engineering ethics, but they decide to not do it. And this could also tie to the lack of transparency and communication. It is really unclear if concerns were ever raised or if risks were known but not communicated, because no one on the project appears to have questioned or reported the flawed designs. And engineers have a duty to speak up when something seems unsafe or even when a new rule or practice is taking place, because transparency and communication are the most important thing in a project than any technical result. So I think that an engineer that has a suspicion about design flaw and they speak up, and they will go against the ethical duty to report an unsafe practice. So the fifth one, I think the design did not follow standard practices without true testing or analysis. And this could reflect just simply in arrogance or laziness or overconfidence, which are not considered a moral practice in engineering ethics, because acknowledging the limits of a project and taking extra care, especially in a construction project like this, are the responsible approaches. So the sixth one and the last one was the negative impact on the public trust. So the bridge collapse shocked the national and international public. While I was doing my research of sources for this presentation, I found out that there were many international sources talking about this. Also, this project was uh, really important because Majestic and Masters is not a Colombian firm. So I really learned how this project reach more boundaries than Colombian ones. And I think engineers have the responsibility to be accountable to the public, especially in a large infrastructure project like this. Failures of this magnitude damage public trust, it affected vulnerable communities, it harmed the reputation of the company, and of course, it caused deep pain to the families of the workers who lost their lives that day. And this also can lead to skepticism and fear of future projects, like a new bridge. So now I'm going to talk about other consequences of the bridge collapse. Of course, I have to remark that the main consequence of all of this was the death of 10 workers. Uh, but I'm gonna explore other ones. And this is a recording video from CGTN. Okay. So these consequences underscore the critical importance of the right engineering standards through oversight and ethical responsibility in large-scale infrastructure projects. Um, the first legal consequence was the government accountability. The Colombian Minister of Transportation publicly held Coviandes, the construction company in charge of this project, accountable for the collapse and emphasizing the responsibility for the project's oversight and execution. Also, there was some third-party accountability of the subcontractors of Coviandes, and Gisaico, one of them, shared responsibility for the collapse, and he was ordered to pay over 6 billion Colombian pesos in damages to other involved party. And I think I decided to choose to put this consequence because an arbitration tribunal was the one who determined uh, that payment to the cycle. And another consequences that involved financial aspect was the implosion, like the previous video, under reconstruction of a new bridge. So the Colombian government declined to finance the reconstruction of the bridge. Instead, they actually mandate Coviandes and its insurance to cover all associated costs. Another consequence, but this is more from the point of view of Coviandes, the company that construct the bridge, was the impact on the reputation and operations. So their public trust was really negatively impacted. The collapse damaged their public confidence and raised concerns about the infrastructure safety standards in Colombia on their previous or future projects. There was the project delay. So, of course, the incident caused significant delay in the highway expansion project between Bogota and Villavicencio, and this affected the traffic in the area and commerce in the whole region. And also, there was an increase in oversight after the collapse engineering practices and project management at Coviandes, and its subcontractors faced a closer examination. After doing this research project on this class, these were my 6 overall ethical learnings. So the Chirahara bridge collapse offered me several important ethical lessons as the engineering as a profession. The first one, it really highlights the critical need to verify all design, process, or changes in a project, any assumption, because in this case the primary cause of the collapse was the incorrect assumption about the structural capacity of the important element. This assumption was neither reviewed or tested, and I think in any engineering project, especially those that involve public safety, any change or assumption must be supported by analysis and true truthful evaluation. Another important lesson that I learned is that accountability cannot be outsourced. Although Coviandes contracted external firms for the design and construction, they retain full responsibility for the project integrity. And I think ethical leadership requires that the company or the people in charge remain actively involved, ensuring that the everything that is going on is under the safe practices, regardless of how many parties are involved. Also, I think this case underscores the that shortcuts, whether it's time, cost, processes, or personal reasons, can lead to devastating consequences. The decision to rely on an initial structural approach without the proper validation or testing compromise the bridge safety and the people working on it. And this decision ultimately resulted in the death of 10 workers. But not only that, also causes a really a financial struggle for the company and the erosion of public trust. I believe that engineers must always prioritize safety over convenience or efficiency, and this um, case really taught me that. But furthermore, I think the collapse illustrates the ethical responsibility to speak up when something appears to be wrong. In this case, no one raised concerns about the design approach, but I think engineers have the duty to voice concerns about safety and integrity even when it is challenging or uncomfortable, because it's just the right thing to do. Beyond the technical aspects, I think this bridge collapse remind me to consider the broader social and economic impact of engineering work. This case causes a major disruption in transportation and delayed regional development too. And I think ethical engineering includes understanding how these decisions can affect the people involved in the project, but also the community around it. And I think this case reinforces that ethics must be the core of engineering practice. The technical skills and all the design and all of that alone is not enough. I think moral responsibility, accountability, and commitment to public welfare are the most essential elements of being an engineer. So, before concluding, I wanna talk about some a personal reflection I had by doing this presentation. I think through this case, I learned that engineering failures are rarely the result of a single mistake. They often reflect deeper issues in communication, oversight, and ethical decision making. The collapse of the Shirahara Bridge was not only a structural failure, I think it was a failure to uphold fundamental engineering values and personal values. I think by researching this case, I saw firsthand the real world consequences that companies like Coviandes face when ethical standards are not followed. Legal accountability, reputational damage, and most importantly, the loss of human life all serves as a reminders of the critical role ethics plays in our profession and I think in any engineering project. This presentation also helped me to connect with what I have learned in class to a real scenario. Concepts like professional responsibility, safety prioritization, and whistleblowing are not just abstract ideas. They actually happen and they are vital tools to prevent future disasters. And I feel that as a future engineer, this case reinforced me my belief that technical knowledge must be guided by a strong ethical principle. And it will be my duty to speak up, follow standards, and always put the public well being above anything else. So now this is a picture of the new Chirahara Bridge under construction. It was rebuilt and reopened in 2024, and the new bridge is a 460-meter long reinforced concrete box girder bridge with a cantilever beam design, built to replace the original structure. And due to safety concerns and cost issues, the original cable stay design and foundations were abandoned. Now the new bridge safely connects Bogota and Villavicencio and includes modern civil engineering geotechnical monitoring to ensure long-term stability. And this is a picture of the Shirahara Bridge that I took from Google Maps. And these are all of the resources that I use for this presentation. And I think I'm really surprised that most of them were in English and not in Spanish. So this was my engineering ethics final, where I discussed the ethical implications related with the Chirahara bridge collapse in Colombia. Thank you so much for your time.